Okay, so then answer the question.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
That's your answer?
You wanted to know who implements.
You have people sitting in
conducts the
screens at the Federal Reserve
transactions.
Bank actually executing those trades. You don't delegate that to anyone else?
No, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, of course, it's a process where there's several steps. Federal Reserve Bank of New York executes transactions through primary dealers.
Okay. Who are the primary dealers?
So the list of primary dealers is on our website.
Do you know any of them? Can you name a single one?
Sure. JPMC.
Go ahead, what?
JP Morgan Chase.
Okay, do you mind if we have a GAO audit to see whether there's been front running or insider trading by them? Do you mind? Is that okay with you?
I'm not sure I have any decision-making authority.
Well, you're the general counsel. I want to know if you're going to try to stop it.
GAO audits government agencies, you want an audit of a private entity. I think that's something that Congress would have to change the authority of the GAO to allow.
All right, now let's say, you're right, that's what we're doing right here, by the way. Let's say that the Federal Reserve gave $1 billion to a very promising fledgling institution called the Dick Cheney Savings and Loan, whose only asset is an unnumbered Swiss bank account. Don't you think it would be a good idea to have the GAO have authority to look into that?
So under the GAO authority as written, a loan by the Federal Reserve to a specific entity, say a particular bank, as you've pointed out, would be subject to GAO audit. We don't oppose that.
All right, now the Federal Reserve has given $1 trillion out. $1 trillion in the past 12 months. That's how much the increase in its assets and liabilities in the balance sheet has been. Who got the money? This, by the way, is a question sent to me by Beatrice Delgado. She just wants to know who got the money. Will you tell me?
So the most of the increase in our balance sheet has been the purchase of U.S. government securities and the purchase of agency guaranteed securities in the open market from market participants broadly.
And what about the rest of it?
Time has expired.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I really think we need answers to these questions, and the only way to get answers to these questions is to have the GAO audit the Federal Reserve. Thank you very much.
I don't know about you, but something doesn't ring true there. And it certainly shouldn't. Because Hawks Cafe has discovered evidence that these things were absolutely happening at the very highest levels of Wall Street, gaming the street like a casino in Vegas. Or perhaps Atlantic City.
I want to bring your attention to the XLF, the Financial Sector Exchange Traded Fund, because this is what we used as a lesson to warn everybody about distribution, if you recall, back in June when we were at all-time historical highs, and we were wondering why were we seeing so much indication of hard motivated selling in this fund when the Dow was at 14,000 and the S&P was coming up to catch it for all-time highs or 6-year highs or 7-year highs? Why were we seeing all this selling? And we know now why we were, because the guys who run Wall Street were distributing at a top. Now, here we are down almost 1,000 points lower on the Dow after the trap door has been opened. What are we seeing now? They're buying it. They're buying this fund, and not only are they buying it, they bought it every day for the last 5 sessions when all that panic was setting in. Look at the volume that came into this fund. The highest volume all year came in the day before a change of balance in power. They're buying this fund with both hands at a panic bottom, just like they were selling this fund with both hands at a euphoria top. That was distribution. This is accumulation. But as this goes lower and lower, real money is coming in and buying it. We're going, just like up here, strong hands were selling to weak hands. Down here, weak hands are selling to strong hands. What about Goldman Sachs? The volume in Goldman, the trading volume looks like they're selling it, but balance of power says they're buying it. What about Bear? They're buying Bear Stearns, and they're buying it with both hands. Lehman Brothers, same damn thing. History always repeats. Markets never change because people never change. Money passes from strong weak hands, and then weak hands sell it back to strong hands at better prices.
Same way. Well, look at the next page. The very next page has the U.S. dollar nominal exchange rate, which shows a 20% increase in the U.S. dollar nominal exchange rate at exactly the same time that you were handing out $500 billion to foreigners. Do you think that's a coincidence?
Yes.
All right. Well.
For we are opposed by an ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. Terror is not a new weapon. Throughout history, it has been used by those who could not prevail either by persuasion or example. But inevitably, they fail.
Everything was going fine for England and the banking penetration and infiltration of our nation until an Irishman stepped forward. Suddenly on the scene arrives a magnetic personality that charges the world's imagination that will absolutely upset your monopoly on the resources of this planet.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time. 2,000 years ago, the proudest boast was Civis Romanus Sum. Today, in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is Ich bin ein Berliner. It took 115 years to make this trip, and 6,000 miles, and 3 generations.
And they were watching this young man with extraordinary intensity, because they knew he had magic. They wanted to know what was the key. How could they discover how to turn people on?
Inciting ideas of liberty and independence using one of their own, Ireland, the world's first successful victory and independence from a monarch, as an example.
Ireland has already set an example and a standard for other small nations to follow. This has never been a rich or powerful country, and yet since earliest times, its influence on the world has been rich and powerful. No larger nation did more to spark the cause of American independence, and independence indeed around the world. Ireland is clad in the cause of national and human liberty with peace. To the extent that peace is disturbed by conflict between the former colonial powers and the new and developing nations, Ireland's role is unique. For every new nation knows that Ireland was the first of the small nations of the 20th century to win its struggle for independence. I believe that your future is as promising as your past is proud, and that your destiny lies not as a peaceful island in a sea of trouble, but as a maker and a shaper of world peace.
I think what people may have forgotten about that Kennedy visit was it was almost like a royal progression with a court and courtiers and a lot of fanfare, helicopters flying all over the place. There was a huge air of excitement about it all. And that extended not just to the people of Ireland, but to the press of Ireland as well.
There were some deep inside the city, perhaps only a few of 26 blue-gartered men, that were not amused at all, and blame could easily be laid on others. How serious is the business of the Corporation of London? What is their level of absolute control? When George Herbert Walker Bush became a bonesman while at Yale University, they gave him, as they do all initiates, a new name. George Herbert Walker Bush would be known secretly by the Brotherhood, the bonesman, as Magog. Magog had a son. His son, George Walker Bush, arrived in Jerusalem in January of 2008.
Esteemed Mr. George W. Bush, the Chief Prince of Meshech and Tuval, leader of the West. The letter is dated the 28th of Tevet, 5768, January 6, 2008. In the name of the Lord, eternal God, to the Honorable Mr. George W. Bush, President of the United States of America. Esteemed Mr. George W. Bush, the Chief Prince of Meshech and Tuval, leader of the West.
Ezekiel 39. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal.